Hello, welcome to the CustomNPCs complete tutorial series. In this series, I go over every single feature of CustomNPCs, down to every button on every tab. The videos are split up into the different tabs on CustomNPCs, then later on into more specific things. I'm sorry about the varying degree of audio quality. Editing audio really is not my strong suit. I hope that you find this helpful, and thank you for watching. Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the CustomNPCs tutorial series for version 1.12.2. In this video, we will be going over all of the mod's items and their functions. I will have a list of time codes in the description so you can skip to an item you want to know more about. Some of the items here I will only give a brief overview of, as they will be covered more extensively in a future video. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The NPC Wand. Right-click on a block to create an NPC. If you right-click the air, you will get a list of surrounding NPCs. You can click the name to select the NPC and manipulate it with the buttons on the right. Edit will open up the NPC editor. TP2 will teleport you to the NPC. Reset will return the NPC to their spawn point and put them in their neutral state. Reset All is the same as the reset button, but will affect all NPCs. So if you have an NPC running away at half health, you can reset them to make them normal. Freeze All will freeze all NPCs in the state that they are currently in. They will not speak, gain health, or move, even if they are in the air. Delete will delete the selected NPC. Mob Cloner. This tool lets you save mobs, including NPCs, so that you can duplicate them elsewhere. All of the mobs' NVT data is saved, so if they have a custom name or potion effect, if you clone them, they will keep them. Right-click a block to bring up your clones list. At the top here you have Clones, Entities, and Server. The Clones tab are clones that were saved to your .minecraft folder. These clones you can transfer between worlds, but only you can see them. The Server tab shows you clones saved to the world folder. These clones can be seen by anyone on the server, and any commands that deal with clones will always look in the server clones. But these will only be available on this world. To move them, you would have to edit the world files. The Entities tab will show you each mob in the game and any mobs from any mods you might have. Let's go to the client clones. Here are where the saved clones will show up. You can see that we have tabs here. These are just for organization. You get 9 tabs, but there is no limit to how many clones can be in a tab. Up here we have a search bar. If you have a lot of clones, you can type the name here and it will narrow down the list. Click on a clone, and then on the right here we have Spawn, which will create the clone on the block you selected. Remove, which will delete the clone from the list. And Mob Spawner, which will create a spawner for that clone. To save a clone, right-click a mob to bring up the cloning menu. Here, you can edit the name of the clone. This isn't the name of the NPC or the mob, this is the name of the file. For example, if I clone this NPC named Bob and name the clone Jacobson, when I duplicate the NPC, it will still have the name Bob. Here you can select the tab that they will be saved into, and here you can toggle whether it is saved to your client or the server. Scripter. This tool will bring up the scripting GUI for things that could be scripted when right-clicked. Error and debug information will show up in this giant black box. Click Copy to copy that to your clipboard. Click Clear to get rid of it. Up here you toggle which scripting language you are using. Up here you toggled whether the script is enabled. If it is no, the script won't run. If it is yes, the script will run. Website will take you to the scripting page on the code development website, and so will API source. Form will take you to the Minecraft form page for CustomNPCs. API doc will take you to the Java doc for CustomNPCs. Click plus to create a new script tab. Here's where you type out your script. Press clear to get rid of it. Press copy to copy it to your clipboard. Click paste to paste it. Click load scripts and it will bring up the list of external scripts saved to world name, CustomNPCs, scripts, ECMA script. Click on a script in available scripts. Click this button to load the script. If you want to unload the script, click on the name under loaded scripts and click this button to unload it. This button here will load all available scripts, and this button here will unload every loaded script. Right-click the air to edit scripts for players or for Forge events. Pather. Right-click an NPC to load them into the tool. Then, right-click on blocks to create a path for them to follow. You have to edit the NPC to make them follow the path. I will go over this in the AI tab video. When you right-click a block or the air, it will bring up the list of saved coordinates. The NPC will walk to the coordinates in this order, top to bottom. You can click on a coordinate to select it, and then click up to move it up the list, down to move it down the list, or delete it from the list. Mounter. Right-click any entity and it will bring up the clones list. Select a clone and click Mount, and it will mount the clone onto the entity. Or, click Player Mount to mount yourself to the entity. Teleporter. Right-click to bring up a list of Minecraft dimensions. Select and click Teleport, and it will transport you to that dimension. It seems to teleport you to the spawn chunks of that dimension. No matter where you teleport from, it will always place you at the same coordinate. Scripted door and block. These are a door and block that can be scripted respectively. When placed, they will bring up the scripting GUI, which you can then access again by right-clicking the block with the scriptor or NPC wand. If they are scripted to have a custom texture, holding up the scriptor or wand will show its original texture. Soulstone. Right-click an entity to store them inside the soulstone. Right-click again to place them. It only has one use, and then it is deleted. Scripted item. An item that could be scripted. Sneak and right-click to open the scripting GUI. NBT book. Right-click an entity to edit its NBT data. Click Edit to open up the NBT data. Then click Save to save the changes you made. Redstone block. This block will emit a redstone signal if the player is in range. Here you can toggle if the range is detailed or not. A not detailed range will just check if the player is within the radius. Detailed range will check the range for each axis. For example, when not detailed, if I set the range for 5, if I'm outside the range of 5 blocks anywhere, it will stop emitting a redstone signal. With detailed, however, I can set it to turn off when I'm outside of its range by 5 blocks vertically, but 20 blocks horizontally. You can also set availability options, and it will only emit a redstone signal if the player meets the requirements. I will talk about availability options in its own video. Carpentry bench. This block is used to craft custom recipes that can be defined in custom NPCs. At the time of making this video, however, this feature is broken. Mailbox. Custom NPCs and players can write letters to other players. Those letters will show up in a mailbox. Right-click the block to view all of your mail, which you can then select to read or delete. It's basically like an email. Location block. This is used for the location quest type. When placed, it will bring up this menu, which can be brought up again by right-clicking the block with the wand. Here you type the name of the location, which should match the name you defined in the quest. Here you define the range from the block the player has to be in for the mod to count them as discovering it. Border block. This pushes the player back in the direction the arrow is facing if the player does not meet the availability options. Click this button to edit them. And here you can write a message for it to say when blocking the player. Here you define how many blocks up the border will affect. Copy block. When placed, it will bring up this menu. You can bring this menu up again by right-clicking the block with the NPC wand. This block copies the block within the selection and saves it into a schematic or blueprint. You can define here how high, wide, and long the selection is. You can name it whatever you want here. Toggle this to save it as a blueprint or a schematic, and click this button to copy the selection. This is used in tandem with the Builder block. When placed, it will bring up this menu, which can then be accessed again by right-clicking the block with the NPC wand. NPCs with the Builder job will automatically build the schematic one by one. Here you select the schematic you want to build, click this to make a preview of the build, click this to enable the build. NPCs will only build if it is enabled. Started tells you if the build has been started. This is toggleable. Finished tells you if the build is finished or not. This is also toggleable. If you set it to yes, the NPCs will stop building. Y offset. Offsets the schematic vertically by the amount you put here. Rotation will rotate the way the schematic is built by 90 degrees. Instant build. This button will immediately build it without having to have builder NPCs. Availability. You can set availability options here. This will make NPCs not build the schematic unless a player within range meets these options. Toggle started to off if you decide to add this later. And those are all the items from the mod. Thank you for watching. In the next video, we will be going over the display tab in the NPC editor. Welcome back to the Custom NPC tutorial series. In this episode, we will be going over the display tab in the NPC editor. First off, right-click the NPC with the NPC wand to bring up the editor, or select and edit the NPC while viewing surrounding NPCs. At the top here, you can type in a name for the NPC, and below it you can set a title for the NPC. This will show up below the NPC name. Over here you can toggle whether the name is always shown, hidden, or only shown when attacking. Clicking the edit button next to model will bring up the parts list. Select a part, and options will show up on the right here so you can customize them. You can change the type of the part here. You can change the color of it with this color picker. Toggling player skin to yes means it will try to find a texture to map onto the model from the skin loaded into the NPC. Over here in the bottom right, you can rotate the NPC model to get a better look at different angles. Most of these parts are self-explanatory, but I will go over the eyes. Eyes will be overlaid on the NPC texture and will blink. There are two types, the 1 pixel high and 2 pixels high. Setting it to none will get rid of the eyes. Changing the color will change the color of the iris. You cannot change the color of the white. Here at Draw, you can toggle if both eyes are drawn, if only the left eye is drawn, or if only the right eye is drawn. Because skins are different, you can offset vertically where the eyes will be drawn to by changing the position. Toggling glint will get rid of the shiny texture on the eye. You can change the color of the eyebrows here. This number changes how thick the eyebrow is. When the NPC blinks, it overlays the eye with the color defined here like an eyelid. Going to scale will show us a list of body parts on the NPC. If we click one, we have sliders here to make it wider, longer, or thicker. In arms and legs, you can toggle share to off if you want each individual arm and leg to have different scales. If you go to entities, you can change the NPC model to be any Minecraft mob, including those from mods. There are also some different humanoid models here. Alex skin is for NPCs using an Alex skin format, and 64x32 are for loading a 64x32 skin. You can't edit the parts for any other model except for NPC, but it still saves the parts you modified, and will show up on other NPC models. Some models will make an extras button appear, which gives you different poses or settings for the model. Down here is a save button. You can save all of the changes you made here as a preset. Then, when making a new NPC, you can click load and load the preset. To the right of the edit button, you can change the size of the NPC. It can be any number between 1 and 30. Here is where you select what texture the NPC has. Click select and it will bring you to the list of texture assets in Minecraft. It defaults to the human male entity textures, but if you click up, you can look at other categories from CustomNPCs. You can keep clicking up until you reach the Assets folder, but you can browse any of these folders and look for textures. I will show you how to add custom textures in the resource pack video. If you click this button, you will toggle it to player. Here, you can type the name of a player and it will pull that player's skin and use it on the NPCs. Click it again to toggle it to URL. Here you can type in the image link for a texture and the NPC will try to load it. If you're on skindex.com, you can click image link for the correct URL. But you can right click on any image online, click copy image address, and paste it and the NPC will load it. Over here at cape, if you select a texture, the cape will show up on the NPC using that texture. If you select a texture for overlay, it will overlay that texture on top of the NPC. This texture follows a player skin format. When living animation is on, the NPC will have a slight sway to their limbs. When it is turned off, they will be motionless. If you type in the hex value of a color here at tint, it will tint the NPC that color. When visible is set to yes, the NPC is, well, visible. When set to no, it's not visible. When set to partially, the NPC is mostly transparent, but you can still slightly see them. If an NPC is set to not be visible, holding out the wand will make them partially visible so you can find them and edit them. Over here at interactable, or intractable as Nope seems to like to call it, when this is set to no, the NPC cannot be right-clicked on at all. Even with the NPC wand, you'll have to right-click the air to edit the NPC. This is to make statues and things that cannot be messed with. Boss bar. When set to show, the NPC's health will be displayed at the top in a boss bar. When set to show when attacking, it will only appear when the NPC is attacking. When set to hide, it doesn't show up. And right next to it, you can change the color of the boss bar. A max of 6 boss bars can be shown for NPCs at the same time. And that is every feature of the Display tab. In the next episode, we will be going over the Stats tab. Thanks for watching. Welcome back to the Custom NPCs tutorial series. In this episode, we will be going over the Stats tab. At health, we can change the maximum health an NPC has. This is in units of half hearts. Aggro range is the radius around the NPC in which they will detect enemies. For example, if we set the aggro range to be 16, because this NPC is outside the radius of 16 blocks, this NPC does not see him. But if we move him to be within the radius, the NPC does see him. We can change the type of creature the NPC is considered to be over here. We can make it normal, undead, or an arthropod. This does not change the behavior of the NPC. This is for things like enchantments or potions, such as how health potions will damage undead entities, and the enchantment Bane of Arthropods deals more damage to arthropods. Over here we can change the respawn settings. When set to yes, the NPC will respawn if they die. This number next to time is how many seconds it takes for the NPC to respawn. When this is set to day, the NPC will only respawn when it is daytime. This is still affected by the time we set here. Let's set the respawn time to 40 seconds. If the NPC dies, if after those 40 seconds it is daytime, the NPC will respawn. However, if after those 40 seconds it is nighttime, the NPC will wait until it is daytime to respawn. Setting it to night is the same thing but reversed. Setting it to no will delete the NPC when they die. Setting it to naturally will make the NPC despawn over time like other mobs. When high dead body is set to no, the NPC's body will still be visible after they die. When it is set to yes, the NPC body will be invisible, but they will still be there. Here we can change settings for the NPC's melee attack. At melee strength, we can change how much damage the NPC does when they swing. This is in units of half hearts. Melee range is how many blocks the NPC can reach in front of them with their swing. The bigger the number, the farther they hit. Speed is the amount of ticks between each swing, so a bigger number will mean more time between each swing. Here you can change how far an entity is knocked back when hit by this NPC's melee attack. Here you can select an effect to be applied to the target when hit. The time is how long the effect will last in seconds, and amplified will let you choose the potency of the effect. Over here we can change settings for the ranged attack. Accuracy is how accurate their shot is. Range is how far their projectile will reach. If the enemy is within their aggro range but farther than the distance they can throw, they will walk until they are within distance. Min and max delay are the amount of redstone ticks between each attack. One redstone tick is equal to 1/10 of a second. After a shot, it will choose a random number between these two values. The min and max delay decides when the NPC attacks, but burst count lets you decide how many shots are in an attack. For example, if the burst count is 4, they will fire 4 times every attack. Burst rate is the amount of Minecraft ticks between each burst shot. One Minecraft tick is 1/20th of a second. So if we set the min and max delay to both be 40, the burst count to be 3, and the burst rate to be 20, every 40 redstone ticks, the NPC will fire 3 shots with 20 Minecraft ticks between each of those shots, which equates to every 4 seconds the NPC will fire 3 shots with 1 second in between each of those shots. Shot count is how many projectiles are fired per shot. If we set this to 5, each time the NPC fires a shot, 5 projectiles will come out at the exact same time. At melee range, if the NPC's target is this many blocks away from them, they will abandon shooting and start attacking with melee. Fire sound is the sound that is played when a projectile is shot. Hit sound is the sound that is played when a projectile hits a target. And ground sound is the sound played when a projectile hits a block. When selecting a sound, on the left here you have categories for the sounds, and on the right here you have the list of all sounds within that category. You can click play to preview the sound, and to select the sound you double click it. When aim while shooting is off, the NPC will just swing their arms whenever they fire. When on, they will aim their arms as if they were holding a bow whenever they are attacking. Shoot indirect will make the NPC fire the projectile way up in the air in an attempt to hit their target. You can toggle if they do this when their target is distant. They consider distant to be around 20 blocks away from them. Or when hidden, which is when their direct line of sight is broken. Side note, for this to work you must toggle must see target to no in the AI tab. Projectile type is where we customize the projectile fired by the NPC. Power is how much damage a projectile does when it hits. This is in units of half hearts. Size is how big the projectile is. Speed is how fast it goes. Punch is like knockback but for projectiles. When set to 3D, the projectile is a 3D model. If it is 2D, the projectile is the item texture. When 3D is on, you get 2 extra options. Spins will make the projectile spin while flying. No spin makes it not spin while flying. When sticks is off, the projectiles are deleted when they hit a block and will make this block cracking particle effect. When on, they will stick to the blocks they hit like an arrow. When has gravity is set to yes, the projectile will have drop off. When it is set to no, you get to choose if the projectile goes at a constant speed or if it accelerates as it flies. Here you can choose if the projectile explodes when it hits something. You can make the explosion small, medium, or large. The explosion is affected by the mob griefing game rule. Here you can select an effect to be applied to the target if they are hit by this NPC's projectile. Time is how many seconds the effect will last, and amplified will increase the potency of the effect. Trail type will make the particle selected here follow behind the projectile as it is flying. Glow will make the model or texture be brighter, regardless of the lighting around it. No glow will make it respect the lighting around it. In resistance, we have sliders that change how resistant the NPC is to certain types of damage. we can make them more or less resistant. For example, if we set the knockback slider to 100, the NPC will not move at all when hit. If we set it to -100, the NPC will be knocked back much farther when hit. Immune to fire determines if the NPC is damaged by fire. Burns in sun determines if the NPC is lit on fire when they are in sunlight. Potion immune determines if the NPC is affected by potion effects. It does not seem to apply to instant health potions though. Can drown determines if the NPC will drown when underwater for too long like other mobs. No fall damage determines if the NPC takes fall damage. And cobweb affected determines if the NPC's movement is slowed down when they are inside of a cobweb. When the NPC is not in combat, health regen is how many half hearts they regenerate every second. You cannot change the intervals between each regen. Combat regen is the same as health regen but works when the NPC is inside of combat. And that is every feature of the Stats tab. Thank you for watching. In the next episode we will be going over the AI tab. Welcome back to the Custom NPCs tutorial series. In this episode we will be going over the AI tab. The AI tab is what changes the NPC's behavior. These settings all change how it reacts to certain situations. On found enemy is where we change how the NPC reacts when it is aggroed. Again, an NPC is aggroed when an entity that they consider hostile enters their aggro range. They can also be aggroed when a player hits them. Setting it to retaliate makes them attack the enemy they find. Setting it to panic will make them run around like an animal when they are hit. They choose a random point and run to it, then choose another random point and run to it. Retreat makes them run away from the enemy. They will try to distance themselves rather than just choose random points. Setting it to nothing will make the NPC do nothing. They will stand still and take the attack. They are still considered to be aggroed, however. Door interact is where we change how an NPC reacts to doors in their movement path. When disabled, the NPC will try to find a way around the door to get to their destination. When set to open, the NPC will open the door and close it behind them. When set to break, the NPC will start breaking down the door like a zombie. Can swim is where we change how the NPC moves in water. When set to yes, the NPC will swim in water like a player holding the jump button. When set to no, they will sink to the bottom. They can still float to get out of the water if their destination is outside, but when standing still they will not float. Shelter from is where you can make the NPC try to avoid sunlight or darkness. This seems to be bugged because it works for the sunlight setting, but the NPC doesn't do anything in the darkness setting. If an enemy is in the NPC's aggro range, if must-see target is set to yes, the NPC must be able to make direct line of sight with the enemy to be aggroed. If set to no, the NPC will be aggroed if the enemy is in range no matter what. For example, because must-see target is set to yes, because this NPC cannot see the enemy, even though they are in aggro range, he is not aggroed. But if must-see target is set to no, even though this NPC is behind 3 layers of blocks, this NPC is still trying to attack him. Attack invisible toggles whether they will be aggroed by an entity that's invisible. Avoids water determines the path the NPC will take if they encounter water. When set to no, if going through water is the shortest path to their destination, they will swim through the water even if can swim is set to no. If set to yes, the NPC will attempt to walk around the water. If it is not possible for them to do so though, the NPC will still go through the water. Every NPC has a home. The default home is the block the NPC was created on, but it can be changed through commands. When return to start is set to yes, if the NPC finds themselves away from their home, they will try to walk back to it. If they cannot make it, eventually they will teleport to their home. This also causes the NPC to be teleported back to their home when they are edited with the wand or reset in the nearby NPC's menu. When set to no, the NPC will not return to their home when edited with the wand or reset in the nearby NPC's menu. Their stats, however, are still reset. Leap at target toggles whether the NPC will leap like a spider at the target they are attacking. Tactical variant changes how the NPC attacks their target. Rush is default and makes them just run towards their target. If set to none, the NPC will stand still and will only attack the target if they are close enough. I would like to explain the others, but they do not seem to function correctly, and the mod creator has said he is considering removing them. Movement is where we change how the NPC moves. There are 3 different types of movement. We will go over standing first. When navigation is set to ground, the NPC will navigate the world normally. They'll have to avoid holes and will float like players in the water. When set to flying, the NPC floats in the air. They don't have to worry about holes or water. Swimming makes them float in the middle of water and swim exceptionally fast. It also makes them very bad at moving on the ground. Position offset. Coordinates have decimal points. The position offset is basically the decimal point of the block the NPC is standing on. The default offset is 5, 5, and 5, which is right in the middle of the coordinate or block. You can set their offset to be between 0 and 10. For example, if we set the offset of this NPC's X value to be 0, he has moved 5 decimal points to the left and is now standing on the very edge of the block. The offset is for adjusting the NPC's position slightly. I often use this for making NPCs lay in bed. When I create the NPC lies right in the middle of the bottom part of the bed, but I want to move them so that they are lying in the bed normally. Moving them by a block is too much, so I adjust the offset to slightly move them into the right position. Animation is the pose the NPC is in. There are many different types of poses. Rotation is how the NPC rotates when standing. Body makes them randomly rotate their entire body. Manual makes them face one direction constantly. You set the degree you want them to face here. Stalking makes them follow nearby players with their body. And head is like manual but allows their head to randomly rotate. When stop on interact is set to yes, if the NPC is right-clicked, they will turn and face the player. If the NPC is moving, like if they are trying to return to their home, they will also stop moving for a short while. When set to no, the NPC does not turn to look at whoever interacted with them and will not stop when right-clicked. Move speed is how fast the NPC moves. The next movement type is wandering. This makes the NPC wander around to randomly chosen blocks around their home. The range is the maximum distance the NPC will wander away from their home. When interacts with NPCs is set to yes, the NPC will occasionally stop in front of NPCs and interact with them. When pauses is set to yes, the NPC will pause for a couple of seconds when they reach their coordinate before moving again. When set to no, the NPC will immediately start moving to the next coordinate. If return to start is set to no, the NPC will still only wander in the range from their home. If they are pushed outside of that range, they will go back to it. The last movement type is moving path. If you have defined a path with the Pather tool, the NPC must be set to moving path to follow it. At movement, we change what the NPC does when they reach the end of their path. Looping will make them take the most direct path to their starting point in order to start the path again. Backtracking will make them navigate the path again but in reverse order. And that is every feature of the AI tab. In the next episode, we will be going over the inventory tab. Thank you for watching. Welcome back to the CustomNPCs tutorial series. In this episode, we are going over the Inventory tab. At the top left here, we have a similar looking GUI for the player's inventory. Here you can put armor on the NPC, and you can also put any block as the helmet for the NPC. On the right, you can put any items in the NPC's main hand and their offhand. The middle slot here is the item they will shoot for their ranged attack. If you put anything there, they will default to their ranged attack settings. If nothing is there, they will always use melee. If you put an arrow in there, they will shoot an arrow entity like firing a bow. Now note, this is all cosmetic. None of this changes anything about the NPC. Putting armor on the NPC does not make them more resistant to damage, and giving the NPC a weapon does not make them do any more damage. All of that is defined in the Stats tab. Next to it, you can define the minimum and maximum amount of experience points dropped by the NPC when they die. It will choose a random value between these two numbers. On the right, you can set items for the NPC to drop when they die. You put the item in the left slot here, and then choose the percentage chance it has to drop when they die. Over here is a button. When set to normal, the NPC will drop these items and XP on the ground when they die. When set to auto pickup, they are automatically placed in the inventory of whichever player killed them. If no player killed them, the items are dropped like normal. If there is no room in that player's inventory, the item is dropped on the ground. And that is every feature of the inventory tab. In the next episode, we will be going over the advanced tab. Thank you for watching. Welcome back to the CustomNPCs tutorial series. In this episode, we will be going over the advanced tab. We will not be going over roles or jobs, nor dialogues. Those will each have their own video. Lines are things the NPC will say in chat and appear in these little speech bubbles. You can write the line out on the left here, and then select a sound that will be played when that line is spoken on the right. World lines are randomly spoken without any prompting from the NPC. They will not say these lines while aggroed. Attack lines are lines said when an NPC finds an enemy. It doesn't matter what on-found enemy is set to in the AI tab, they will say this line. Interact lines are spoken directly to the player when the player interacts with them. Killed lines are said when the NPC dies. Kill lines are said when the NPC kills something. NPC lines are said when an NPC interacts with another NPC if their movement type is set to wandering. Typing in @P will make the NPC say the name of the nearest player. Typing in player in brackets will make the NPC say the name of the player that interacts with them. Typing @NPC will make them say their own name. When random lines is set to yes, they will choose a random line from the list whenever they say a line. When set to no, they will say each line consecutively. For example, I have 5 lines set for killed lines. Each time he dies, he says the next consecutive kill line. In factions, you choose which faction the NPC is a part of. As you can see at the top, the color of the faction chosen changes the color of the NPC name. Here you toggle if the NPC is aggroed by NPCs who are part of factions that they consider hostile. If this is set to off, they will only be aggroed if hit first. Here you toggle if the NPC will defend fellow faction members if they are attacked. For example, when set to no, these NPCs are part of the same faction, but only the one I hit attacks me. When set to yes, all the NPCs attack me. On death, you can choose how many points a player will gain or lose for 2 factions. Click on a faction, type in the amount of points here, then choose if you want to decrease or increase the amount of points the player has, then click add to register it. In the sounds menu, you can choose sounds for the NPC. To delete a sound, just click inside the box, press Ctrl A to highlight it, then press backspace to delete it. Living sound is played randomly by the NPC. Angry sound is a sound played randomly when the NPC is aggroed. Hurt sound is a sound played when an NPC is damaged. Death sound is a sound played when the NPC dies. And step sound is a sound played whenever the NPC takes a step. When has pitch is set to yes, the sound will be given a random pitch when played. When set to no, the sound will always be played at the original pitch. NPCs can have two different versions of themselves, which they will switch between depending on if it's day or night. We edit that in the night menu. On the left here we have all the NPC tabs. Setting them to yes will mean that this tab has a different version for day and night, and the NPC will switch between them. To change the settings, toggle editing mode to yes. Then you can choose to load the day version of the NPC or the night version of the NPC. When you click load day or night, make sure to exit out of the NPC menu, then enter back in again. Sometimes the mod doesn't register when you load day or night. Then make your changes through the NPC. Toggle editing mode to no to make the NPC switch automatically. In the linked menu, a list of linked categories will show up here. You click on the name to add the NPC to that linked category, and click on clear to remove them from that category. NPCs in a linked category all share the same settings and customization. If you change one, you change all of them at the same time. Creating a category will be gone over in the Global tab video. Scenes are like simpler scripts for the NPC. Name the scene here, then click Add. You can add up to 6 scenes per NPC. When the scene is disabled, it will not run on this NPC when it is started. You have to toggle it to enable. You can choose if the scene can be started by pressing numpad 1, 2, or 3, and clicking X deletes the scene. Click Edit to open the scene editor. Scenes run on seconds. When a scene is started, it counts up in seconds. When you edit a scene, for each line you first put a number. This is the second you want this line to be run. So if I put 4 here, when this scene is started, after 4 seconds it will run whatever I put there. In the description I have put a list of functions for scenes. Thank you to Doubt for that. The scene is started by using the command /nopes scene start scene name. Multiple NPCs can have the same scene name. The scene will run on all NPCs that have the same scene name. So these 3 NPCs all have a scene named NPC scene. When I start the scene, these NPCs will all start running it. When a scene is started, it will continue to run until it is reset. A scene cannot be started again if it is running. To reset a scene, type /nopes scene reset scene name. Or just type nopes scene reset to reset all scenes. Nopes scene time number scene will set the scene to that specific second. Nopes scene pause scene name will pause the scene on the second it is at. To unpause, use the /nopes scene start command. Marks are 3D symbols that appear over the NPC's head. Add a mark, then select the symbol you want. This lets you change the color. The availability options will make it so the player can only see the mark when they meet these options. Clicking X deletes the mark. You can add 9 marks, but the game will only display the first mark that the player meets the availability options for. And that is most of the features of the Advanced tab. Thank you for watching. In the next episode, we will be going over the Global tab.